600 pages, 12 years, and at the end of it all, nothing. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, one of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the world, spent more than a decade examining the life of one man. Investigators interviewed witnesses, reviewed documents, analyzed financial records, and compiled hundreds of pages of reports. Yet when the investigation finally ended, no criminal charges were filed. That man was Michael Jackson. But the story of Michael Jackson does not begin with investigations or controversy. To truly understand his life, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a small industrial city in the American Midwest called Gary, Indiana. In 1958, Gary was known as a steel town. Massive factories dominated the skyline, and the air was often filled with smoke from the steel mills that operated day and night. Life there was difficult and demanding. Most families depended on hard physical labor to survive, and the people who worked in the mills earned their living through long hours and exhausting work. It was not a glamorous place, but it was a place where families relied on determination and discipline to build a future. It was into this environment that Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958. He was the seventh of 9 children born to Joseph Jackson and Catherine Jackson. The Jackson family lived in a small house on Jackson Street, a modest home with only 2 bedrooms. Despite the limited space, 11 people shared that house together: Joseph, Catherine, and their 9 children. Life in the Jackson household required everyone to share everything, from beds to responsibilities. Money was limited and comfort was rare. Yet inside that crowded home existed something remarkable, a deep connection to music. Joseph Jackson, often called Joe, had once dreamed of becoming a professional musician himself. Although his own musical ambitions had never fully succeeded, he quickly noticed that several of his children had real musical talent. Determined not to let that talent go to waste, he began organizing his sons into a performing group. Joe took on the role of manager, coach, and strict disciplinarian. Rehearsals became a daily routine in the Jackson household, sometimes lasting for hours at a time. The boys practiced songs and dance routines repeatedly until every movement and note was perfectly synchronized. Michael would later describe these rehearsals as both formative and frightening. He often spoke about being afraid of disappointing his father, explaining that mistakes during practice were not tolerated. According to Michael, Joe demanded discipline and perfection from his children, and punishment could follow if they failed to meet his expectations. Over the years, this strict approach would be interpreted in different ways. Some people viewed Joe Jackson as a visionary father who recognized extraordinary talent and pushed his children to greatness. Others believed his methods were far too harsh and emotionally damaging. Regardless of the debate, those relentless rehearsals produced performers unlike anything audiences had seen before. In 1964, 5 of the Jackson brothers officially formed a group that would soon become known as the Jackson 5. The group included Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and the youngest member, Michael. Although Michael was the youngest, he quickly became the center of attention. At just 6 years old, he displayed remarkable confidence on stage. His voice carried an emotional intensity that surprised audiences, and his ability to move rhythmically across the stage made him a natural performer. Even at such a young age, people who watched him perform sensed that he possessed something special. The Jackson 5 began performing at local clubs, talent shows, and community events across the Midwest. They traveled through a network of venues commonly referred to as the Chitlin Circuit, a collection of clubs and theaters where black musicians could perform during a time when racial segregation still limited opportunities in many parts of the United States. Night after night, the brothers performed for live audiences, gradually building a reputation for their energetic shows and impressive musical abilities. Their breakthrough came when Bobby Taylor, a musician associated with Motown Records, saw the group perform. Impressed by their talent, Taylor arranged an audition with Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown. Gordy had already built one of the most influential music labels in America, producing major artists and shaping the sound of popular music during the 1960s. When he watched the Jackson 5 perform, he immediately recognized their potential. Motown signed the group, opening the door to national and eventually global fame. By 1969, the Jackson 5 released their first major single, I Want You Back. The song quickly climbed the charts and became a #1 hit. Soon after, they released ABC, followed by The Love You Save, and then I'll Be There. Remarkably, all 4 songs reached the #1 position on the Billboard charts. No musical group in history had ever achieved 4 consecutive #1 singles with their first 4 releases. At the center of this unprecedented success was a young boy with a powerful voice and an infectious stage presence. Michael Jackson was only 11 years old, yet he was already becoming one of the most recognizable young performers in the world. However, the success of the Jackson 5 came with a hidden cost. While other children his age were going to school, playing with friends, and slowly discovering the world around them, Michael Jackson spent most of his time working. His life revolved around recording studios, television appearances, rehearsals, and national tours. Instead of experiencing a typical childhood, he lived under the pressures of fame and constant performance. Years later, Michael would speak about this period with a sense of sadness. He once described looking out the window of a recording studio and seeing children playing in a park across the street. Watching them made him emotional because he realized he could not join them. While the world saw a rising superstar, Michael Jackson was still a child, longing for the simple experiences he never had. As the 1970s began, Michael Jackson was no longer just a talented child singer from Gary, Indiana. He was becoming a global phenomenon. Yet the greatest success of his career, the moment that would transform music and popular culture forever, was still ahead. An album, a performance, and a dance move would soon change the world of entertainment. That moment would be called Thriller. As the Jackson 5 entered the 1970s, their popularity continued to grow at an incredible speed. Under Motown Records, the group quickly became one of the biggest musical acts in the United States. Their songs were played constantly on radio stations. Their performances appeared on major television shows, and audiences everywhere were captivated by the energy of the young group. At the center of it all stood Michael Jackson, still only a teenager, but already carrying the responsibility of being the lead singer and main attraction of the group. Motown understood Michael's unique talent. Berry Gordy carefully managed the group's image and sound, presenting the Jackson 5 as energetic, joyful performers who could appeal to audiences of all backgrounds. Their music blended soul, pop, and rhythm and blues in a way that felt fresh and exciting. Songs like ABC, I Want You Back, and I'll Be There became defining tracks of the era. Yet, as the years passed, Michael began to feel that the creative control of Motown limited his artistic growth. While the label had helped launch his career, it also controlled the songwriting, production, and overall direction of the group. By the mid-1970s, the Jackson family made a major decision. They left Motown and signed a new deal with Epic Records. Because Motown owned the name Jackson 5, the group had to change its identity slightly and became known simply as the Jacksons. This move gave them greater creative freedom and allowed Michael to explore new musical directions. During this period, Michael was growing up quickly, transforming from a child star into a young adult artist searching for his own voice. Although the Jacksons continued to release music and tour successfully, Michael's personal ambition was becoming increasingly clear. He wanted to create music that reflected his own ideas, his own style, and his own artistic vision. That opportunity arrived in the late 1970s when he began working with producer Quincy Jones. Their collaboration would become one of the most important partnerships in the history of popular music. In 1979, Michael released his solo album, Off the Wall, produced by Quincy Jones. The album was an immediate success and demonstrated a new level of maturity in Michael's music. It blended pop, funk, disco, and soul with remarkable precision, creating a sound that felt both modern and timeless. Songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You became major hits, dominating radio stations and dance floors around the world. Critics praised the album for its creativity and energy, and audiences responded with enthusiasm. Off the Wall sold millions of copies worldwide, making it the best-selling album in the history of recorded music. But the album's influence went far beyond sales numbers. Michael Jackson transformed the way music was presented visually. His music videos were no longer simple promotional clips. They were short cinematic productions with storylines, choreography, and high-level production values. The music video for Thriller, released in 1983, was nearly 14 minutes long and directed by filmmaker John Landis. Featuring elaborate costumes, dramatic storytelling, and unforgettable dance sequences, the video looked more like a short film than a traditional music video. It became a cultural phenomenon, played repeatedly on MTV, and watched by millions of viewers across the globe. Around the same time, Michael delivered one of the most iconic performances in television history. On March 25, 1983, during a special program celebrating Motown's anniversary, Michael performed Billie Jean in front of a live audience. During the performance, he introduced a dance move that instantly captured the imagination of the world. He glided backward across the stage in a movement that appeared almost supernatural. The move would become known as the Moonwalk. The audience erupted in amazement, and within days the moment had spread across television broadcasts and newspapers worldwide. That single performance cemented Michael Jackson's reputation not only as a singer, but also as one of the most innovative dancers in entertainment history. By the mid-1980s, Michael Jackson had achieved a level of global fame that very few artists had ever experienced. He was no longer just a successful musician. He had become a cultural icon whose influence reached across music, fashion, dance, and media. His albums sold in every corner of the world. His performances filled enormous stadiums, and his image was instantly recognizable to people of all ages. Yet, even as his career reached extraordinary heights, events were unfolding that would begin to shape a much darker chapter in his life. Behind the scenes, an accident during a commercial shoot in 1984 would change his physical health and introduce a struggle that would follow him for the rest of his life. It was a moment that seemed small at first, but its consequences would prove enormous. And it began with a television commercial for Pepsi. By the early 1980s, Michael Jackson had reached a level of global fame that very few entertainers in history had ever experienced. His album Thriller was dominating the music charts around the world. His music videos were transforming the entertainment industry, and his performances were watched by millions. Everywhere he went, crowds gathered. Everywhere his music played, people stopped to listen. Michael Jackson had become one of the most recognizable figures on the planet. Yet behind the success and celebration, an unexpected event was about to change the course of his life. In January 1984, Michael Jackson participated in the filming of a commercial for Pepsi. The commercial was part of a major advertising campaign connected to his growing global popularity. During the shoot, Michael stood on a stage surrounded by bright lights and special effects designed to create a dramatic visual moment. As the cameras rolled and the pyrotechnics exploded around him, something went terribly wrong. A spark from one of the fireworks ignited Michael's hair, causing it to catch fire. At first, Michael did not realize what had happened. The music continued playing and he remained in position, performing as the flames began burning the top of his head. Within seconds, members of the production crew rushed forward to extinguish the fire, but the damage had already been done. Michael suffered second-degree burns to his scalp. The injury required medical treatment and left him in severe pain. Although the accident was quickly reported in the media, few people understood the long-term consequences it would have. To manage the intense pain caused by the burns, doctors prescribed powerful pain medication. Over time, these medications became an ongoing part of Michael's life. While they initially helped him recover physically, they also introduced a dependency that would follow him for many years. The Pepsi accident also marked a turning point in Michael's personal outlook. In the years that followed, he became increasingly private and cautious about the outside world. Fame had already placed enormous pressure on his life, but now he appeared to seek greater isolation and control over his environment. During the late 1980s, Michael Jackson created what would become one of the most unusual and famous private homes in the world. He purchased a large property in California and transformed it into a place he called Neverland Ranch. The name was inspired by the fictional world of Peter Pan, the boy who never grows up. For Michael, the idea carried deep emotional meaning. Neverland Ranch was designed to feel less like a typical home and more like an amusement park. The property included a private zoo, carnival rides, a movie theater, gardens, and even a small train that traveled around the land. Visitors described the ranch as a magical environment filled with colorful decorations, music, and playful attractions. Michael often explained that Neverland represented the childhood he felt he had never experienced. Throughout his career, Michael spoke openly about the loneliness he felt as a child star. From a young age, his life had been dominated by rehearsals, tours, and recording sessions. While other children spent their days playing with friends and exploring the world around them, Michael was performing in front of audiences and cameras. As an adult, he appeared determined to recreate the childhood experiences he believed he had missed. Because of this, Neverland Ranch frequently hosted children from charities, hospitals, and disadvantaged communities. Groups of young visitors were invited to spend time at the ranch, enjoying the rides, animals, and entertainment that filled the property. To many people who visited, the environment seemed joyful and welcoming. Children who had faced illness or difficult circumstances often described their experiences at Neverland as unforgettable. However, Michael's unusual lifestyle also began attracting increasing public attention. The sight of a world-famous adult pop star living in a private amusement park and spending time with children puzzled many observers. Some fans believed Michael was simply expressing his desire to help children and heal from his own difficult childhood. Others found the situation strange and began raising questions about his behavior. By the early 1990s, the media had started paying closer attention to Michael Jackson's personal life. Tabloid newspapers published stories about his appearance, his friendships, and his eccentric habits. Rumors and speculation began spreading rapidly, often without clear evidence. As the world's fascination with Michael Jackson grew, so did the scrutiny surrounding him. For several years, Neverland Ranch remained a symbol of Michael's unique personality and his attempt to build a world separate from the pressures of fame. But in 1993, that world would suddenly become the center of one of the most controversial allegations in entertainment history. A young boy named Jordan Chandler would make accusations that shocked the public and triggered an investigation that would follow Michael Jackson for years. The dream of Neverland was about to collide with a storm of controversy that would change his life forever. And magazines around the world reported constantly on the developing story, each outlet seeking the latest details or sensational angle. The intense scrutiny affected not only Michael's public image, but also his personal life, his family, and those close to him. To many, the accusations seemed at odds with the persona Michael Jackson had cultivated for decades. He had presented himself as a playful, gentle figure, someone deeply connected to children and committed to charitable work. The contrast between his public image and the allegations created a complicated narrative in the public mind. Supporters struggled to defend him, while critics demanded accountability. The tension between admiration and suspicion grew with each passing day. In an effort to resolve the situation, Michael Jackson eventually reached a financial settlement with the Chandler family in late 1994. The settlement was not an admission of guilt, but it allowed him to avoid a prolonged and highly publicized trial. Despite the legal resolution, the allegations continued to haunt him, shaping public perception and influencing media coverage for years to come. Every appearance, every interview, and every new project became subject to intense scrutiny. The incident also had a profound personal impact on Michael. He became even more private, retreating further into the seclusion of Neverland Ranch. Security measures were heightened, and the boundaries around his personal life became stricter than ever. Friends and collaborators described him as cautious, vigilant, and emotionally sensitive, aware that every action he took could be misinterpreted or misrepresented. Meanwhile, the world remained fascinated by Michael Jackson. His music continued to sell in record-breaking numbers, his tours drew massive audiences, and his influence on pop culture remained undeniable. Yet the contrast between his public achievements and the controversies surrounding his private life created a persistent tension. Michael's story became a constant balancing act between his artistry and the scrutiny imposed by fame. A life where celebration and suspicion coexisted in a delicate and often painful equilibrium. Despite the challenges, Michael Jackson continued to pursue his passion for music and performance. He worked on new albums, collaborated with other artists, and explored creative projects that reflected his evolving artistry. His dedication to his craft became a refuge, allowing him to focus on the creative expression that had defined him from childhood. Yet even as he reached artistic heights, the shadows of controversy remained a constant presence, shaping his life in ways that were impossible to escape. By the late 1990s, Michael Jackson had become a figure defined as much by his struggles as by his talents. Neverland remained both a sanctuary and a source of scrutiny, a place where he sought to reclaim innocence and joy, yet where public curiosity and skepticism followed him relentlessly. In the world's eyes, Michael Jackson's life was no longer just about music. It had become a story of fame, power, vulnerability, and the complicated intersection between childhood trauma and adult celebrity. In 1988, Michael Jackson purchased a sprawling 2,700-acre property in Los Olivos, California, which he named Neverland Ranch, inspired by J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. The estate was a reflection of Michael's longing for the childhood he never experienced, a sanctuary filled with amusement rides, a zoo, gardens, and even a private movie theater. It was a world where he could preserve innocence, indulge creativity, and escape the pressures of fame that had defined him his entire life. Neverland became more than a home. It was an ideal, a manifestation of the fantasies and vulnerabilities of a man who had been a child star in a world that offered little normalcy. Michael opened Neverland to children from all walks of life. Some were terminally ill, visiting through charitable programs. Others were children of celebrities or ordinary families who found themselves within Michael's orbit. He saw himself as a companion, a playmate, someone who could provide joy and friendship. To outsiders, his interactions with children appeared unusual, even controversial, but to Michael, they were genuine expressions of care and a desire to nurture innocence he felt he had lost. Neverland became both a refuge for himself and a place of wonder for his young visitors, a complex blend of generosity and eccentricity that drew both admiration and suspicion. By the time 2003 arrived, Michael Jackson was facing intense public scrutiny again. A British journalist, Martin Bashir, had spent 8 months filming a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson, capturing Michael's life at Neverland and his interactions with children. In the documentary, Michael stated that he saw nothing wrong with sharing his bed with children who came to visit. While he described it as a loving and innocent act, the remarks shocked many viewers and sparked a wave of criticism. The media and public opinion were swift to judge, and the footage became a pivotal moment that would fuel further allegations and legal action. Shortly thereafter, Gavin Arvizo, a 13-year-old who had been treated for cancer and developed a close friendship with Michael and his family, made allegations of sexual abuse. The claims were serious, and the Santa Barbara County District Attorney launched a full investigation. Michael was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including lewd acts upon a minor and administering an intoxicant. The charges came after years of scrutiny and followed the pattern of intense media coverage that had always accompanied his life. Michael's world, already isolated and heavily guarded, suddenly became a courtroom battleground where every action and relationship was dissected under public and legal scrutiny. Despite the allegations, many who knew Michael personally described him as a loving, generous, and deeply sensitive man. His relationships with children, while unconventional, were rooted in empathy, compassion, and a desire to create joy. The legal system, however, and the court of public opinion interpreted his actions through a lens of suspicion and moral panic. Neverland, once a sanctuary of innocence, had now become a symbol of controversy, representing the complex intersection of Michael's personal inclinations, public image, and the unforgiving scrutiny of fame. As the investigation progressed, Michael maintained his innocence. He cooperated with authorities, submitted to interviews, and allowed access to his properties. The trial that would follow in 2005, though still in the future at this point, was already casting a shadow over his life. Yet, amid the chaos, Michael continued to create music, rehearse performances, and interact with his fans, determined to preserve the essence of the artist that had enthralled the world for decades. Neverland remained both a personal retreat and a point of contention, encapsulating the duality of his life, a place of dreams and joy, yet surrounded by suspicion and controversy. In 2005, Michael Jackson faced one of the most serious moments of his life. After months of investigation, he stood trial in Santa Barbara, California, accused of multiple charges related to the Gavin Arvizo case. The trial lasted nearly 5 months and attracted worldwide media attention. Witnesses testified, evidence was presented, and every detail of Michael's life was examined in court. Throughout the process, Michael Jackson firmly maintained his innocence. On June 13, 2005, the jury delivered its verdict. Michael Jackson was found not guilty on all charges. For his supporters, the verdict confirmed what they had believed all along. For critics, questions still remained. Although the court had cleared him legally, the controversy surrounding his life continued to follow him. After the trial, Michael largely stepped away from the public spotlight. He spent time living outside the United States and focused on his family and children. Financial challenges and years of legal battles had taken a toll on his life and career. Yet, despite everything, the world's fascination with Michael Jackson never disappeared. In 2009, Michael announced a major comeback. The concert series, titled This Is It, was planned as a series of performances in London and was expected to mark his return to the global stage. Fans around the world rushed to buy tickets, and anticipation grew rapidly. Many believed the concerts would remind the world why Michael Jackson had once been called the King of Pop. But that comeback would never happen. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died in Los Angeles at the age of 50 after suffering cardiac arrest. The news shocked the world. Millions of fans mourned his death, and tributes poured in from artists, world leaders, and admirers across the globe. His memorial service was watched by hundreds of millions of people, becoming one of the most viewed broadcasts in history. Even after his death, Michael Jackson's influence on music and culture remained enormous. His albums continued to sell, his songs were played around the world, and new generations discovered his work. Yet discussions about his life never fully ended. For some, Michael Jackson remains one of the greatest entertainers in history. For others, his legacy is complicated by the controversies that surrounded him. What is certain is that Michael Jackson changed the world of music forever. From a small house in Gary, Indiana, to becoming the most famous pop star on the planet, his journey was extraordinary. His story is one of talent, fame, struggle, and mystery. A life that continues to fascinate people long after the music first began.